In this video, we're going to take a look at how to find the exact value of sine and cosine for each angle. So we've already got our unit circle built from the last video. Let's take a look at finding exact values. So if I just need to find the exact value of sine and cosine for 60 degrees, then remember cosine is your horizontal, theta is our angle measure, so that's all that means. So sine of theta and cosine of theta, and we want to know cosine of 60 degrees and sine of 60 degrees. So cosine is like the x coordinate and sine is like our y coordinate. So let's look up here in our unit circle and find 60 degrees, which is right here. So cosine is like the x and sine is like your y. Cosine is the horizontal, sine is the vertical. So all we would need to say is the cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. You just pick them out directly. So cosine of 60 degrees equals 1/2, and sine of 60 degrees equals the square root of 3/2. Notice the square root of 3/2 is more exact than if you were to get that value in your calculator and have it as a decimal. So we call that a more exact value, because if you notice the sine of 60, if you just type it in your calculator, is 0.866025438 and keeps going. So to have a more exact value, you just want to leave it in radical form, which is what we did. All right, so number 2 says find the exact value for sine and cosine for -pi/2. So we've talked about converting radians to degrees. So we could either convert it, or you might already know that that is just -90 degrees, because pi/2 is equal to 90. So if we go from -90 degrees, that just means we have to travel from 0 and go down and around the circle instead of up. So -90 degrees is actually equivalent to 270 degrees. So with a little bit of work, we would say -90 degrees equals 270 degrees. And so the cosine of -pi/2 would equal 0. That's that x value right there. And then the sine of -pi/2 would equal the y value, which is -1. All right, let's do number 3. 3 asks for the exact value of sine and cosine for 135 degrees. So you just find that point on the unit circle and pick out cosine is like your x and sine is like your y. They're in alphabetical order. That's another way to remember it. So cosine of 135 degrees was our x, which was the negative square root of 2/2. Sine is like the y value at 135 degrees. So that was positive square root of 2/2. And we just consider those more exact because they're not rounded off. That's the main idea. Pretty simple though. So number 4, we want to find sine of 225 and cosine of 225. So we go to 225 right here and you just pick them out. So cosine is like the x and sine is like the y. So sine would equal the negative square root of 2/2, but in this case, they're actually both equal to that. So we'll just write them both down. For number 5, we need the sine of 60 and the cosine of 60, which we actually already did that in example 1. So let's look at number 6. 6 says sine of 11pi/6 and cosine of 11pi/6. So I'm just going to review converting for a minute. So if we want to convert this into degrees, remember put pi on the bottom so it'll cancel out, and put 180 at the top. So we would say 11 times 180 is 1980 divided by 6, which gives us 330 degrees. Okay, so then we could find sine of 11pi/6, which is equal to 330 degrees. All right, so let's go there. So sine is like the y value, the vertical, and cosine is the horizontal or the x. So sine of 11pi/6, was that -1/2? Yeah, -1/2, and then cosine of 11pi/6 was equal to positive square root of 3 over 2. So when you're asked to find the exact value for sine and cosine, you just use your unit circle. You can also have one that's just printed nice and neat off of the internet, or use the one you've written down in your notes. But make sure it's accurate first, and then just pick out the exact value of sine and cosine for each angle. Just remember that each coordinate on the unit circle has cosine as like the x or the horizontal value, and sine is the y. And theta is just the variable that represents an unknown angle measure. So that's all that theta represents. Anyway, thanks for listening. Hope this helps.